Hey guys, Laura Mason with Daily Dose of the Good News, and today we are finishing Acts 5. We're going to be reading verses 33 through 42. So if you haven't read that, make sure you get your reading in today, because that's the whole point of Daily Dose. Daily Dose is encouragement to you guys to get into your Bibles, because I know what an obstacle it can be. It took me a really long time to create the habit of getting in my Bible, but I know how life-changing it is. So that's my encouragement to y'all. So get those verses read, and then come back and join me. So today I'm going to be reading a lot from this book I've been using as an accompaniment book. It's written by William Barclay, and this is the Acts of the Apostles, and he goes through small section by small section of Acts and gives a lot more background that I found especially helpful for this set of verses. So I'm going to read a good bit from it, and hopefully you'll find it helpful as well. So it says, on their second appearance before the Sanhedrin, the apostles found an unexpected helper. Gamaliel, I'm probably not saying that right, was a Pharisee. Now, there is this basic difference between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. As we've seen, the Sadducees were the wealthy, priestly collaborationists who were ever seeking to preserve their own prestige and their own power. The Pharisees had no political ambitions. Their name literally means the separated ones, and they had separated themselves from all ordinary life, from all ordinary men, in order to devote life to the keeping of the smallest detail of the law. There were never more than about 6,000 of them all told, and the austerity of their lives made them highly respected. But Gamaliel was more than respected. He was loved. He was a kindly man with a far wider tolerance than his fellows. He was, for instance, one of the very few Pharisees who did not regard Greek culture and letters as sinful and forbidden. He was one of the very few to whom the title Rabban had been given. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know if it's refers to rabbi, or I should have looked that up. Men called him the beauty of the law, and when he died, it was said, since Rabban Gamaliel died, there has been no more reverence for the law, and purity and abstinence died out at the same time. When the Sanhedrin seemed likely to resort to violent measures against the apostles, he intervened. The Pharisees had a belief which combined fate and free will. They believed that all things were in the hand of God, and yet they believed that man was responsible for his actions. Everything is foreseen, they said, yet freedom of choice is given, just like we believe today. Everything is decreed by God, they said, except the fear of God. So Gamaliel's point was that they must have a care in case they were exercising their free will to go against God. He pleaded that if this matter was not of God, it would come to nothing anyway. He quoted two examples. So he quotes the example of Theudas. In those days, Palestine had a quick succession of firebrand leaders who set themselves up as the deliverers of their country, and sometimes even as the Messiah. Who this Theudas was, we do not know. There was a Theudas who arose some years later, who led a band of people out to the Jordan with the promise that he could divide the waters and that they would walk over dry shod, and whose rising was swiftly dealt with. Theudas was also a common name, and so no doubt this was just another firebrand. Judas had rebelled at the time of the census, and the census was taken by the governor Quirinius in 6 AD. And the purpose of the census, of course, was taxation. Judas was a fanatic who took up the position that God was the king of Israel, to him alone tribute was due, and that all other taxation was impious, and to pay it was a blasphemy. He attempted to raise a revolution but failed. So Gamaliel quoted these instances and declared that if this matter was not of God, it would of itself fail. But if it was, nothing could stop it. And if they tried to stop it, they were opposing God. And the Sanhedrin listened to him. Once again, they threatened the apostles and then let them go. They went rejoicing. So the apostles went rejoicing in their tribulations. They rejoiced in persecution for two reasons. It was an opportunity to demonstrate their loyalty to Christ. but also it was a real opportunity to share in the experience of Christ. Those who shared in the cross bearing would share in the crown wearing. And Christ tells us that that's going to happen. He tells us that there'll be trials and tribulations specifically for sharing your faith. So they rejoiced in that, which I can appreciate. I do also want to share. So the two situations where that he gives and says, if it's not of Christ, it will fail on its own. It also reminds me of different religious groups and why it's important that we at least know something about them so that we can have educated conversations with people who are of that faith and maybe help them see why we believe Christianity is the only way to heaven. The first thoughts go to the Mormon Church and why we don't believe that is a Christian faith. Also Muslims. And, Muslims, it's for both of those, really. You say, well, if it's not of God, would these just die out? However, God does allow things to happen that are not, I don't know the right way to say that. He allows these other religions to rise up and become powerful. I can't say I know what reason, but we know that the Muslim religion goes all the way back to Ishmael, who was the first son of Abraham that he had with Sarah, his wife's maidservant. And so that was not of God. And in the reading, once you really read that and look at it in the way of that's how the Muslim faith maybe started, it really makes a lot more sense. But it's important for us to really know a lot of the basics of those religions so that you can have a discussion with those believers and understand where they're coming from and share why where we're coming from, and just help them maybe see from a different side. So I know that was a lot of reading from here, but I thought the background of Pharisees and Sanhedrin and all that was really helpful. I also didn't remember this particular Pharisee's name. Nicodemus is the only one that I've really remembered, and I remembered that he was a believer that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. And I wasn't sure who else. Perhaps Gamaliel is one as well. It's certainly nice to see that there was one that was loved, since you usually see so much hostility between the new Christians and the Pharisees. So thanks for joining today. Tomorrow we will be getting into verses chapter 6, and chapter 6 is actually only 16 or 15 verses. So let's see. Maybe let's look at doing all of chapter 6. So tomorrow we'll do Acts chapter 6 verses 1 through 15. And I hope you'll have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye.